Hey there movie lovers, welcome back to Rocky Watches Movies. Today we're checking into one of the most iconic horror films of all time, Stanley Kubrick's 1980 masterpiece, The Shining. This chilling tale of isolation, madness and supernatural terror has left a lasting mark on pop culture. But there's much more to this film than meets the eye. We're uncovering behind-the-scenes stories that make The Shining even more fascinating. So grab your axe and let's cut to the chase with 20 things you never knew about The Shining. David Hughes, one of Kubrick's biographers, revealed that Stephen King actually wrote an entire draft of the screenplay for The Shining. However, Kubrick didn't even bother to look at it, which seems understandable when you consider that the director had once described King's writing as weak. Instead, Kubrick collaborated with Diane Johnson on the screenplay, as he was a fan of her book The Shadow Knows. The two spent 11 weeks working together on the script. The executive producer of the film was Kubrick's brother-in-law, Jan Harlan. Stanley's wife, Christiane Kubrick, and daughter, Vivian Kubrick, both contributed to the film's design and music. However, Vivian is perhaps better known for her on-set documentary, The Making of The Shining. The 30-minute film, which aired on the BBC, offered a rare glimpse into Kubrick's directorial style. Stephen King often recalls how Stanley Kubrick rang him at 7 in the morning to say ghost stories were optimistic, since they implied life after death. When King asked about hell, Kubrick replied, "I don't believe in hell." King tells this anecdote like a horror story, since he famously hates Kubrick's adaptation of his book. In 1983, King said, "I'd admired Kubrick for a long time and had high hopes for the project, but I was deeply disappointed with the end result. Parts of the film are chilling, charged with a relentlessly claustrophobic terror, but others fall flat." One aspect King disliked was the casting of Jack Nicholson. According to King, Jack Nicholson, though a fine actor, was all wrong for the part. He explained that Nicholson's previous major role in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, combined with his manic grin, led the audience to perceive him as unhinged from the very beginning. King argued that this undermined the story, as the novel centres on Jack Torrance's gradual descent into madness under the malign influence of the Overlook Hotel. If the character appeared insane from the outset, King believed the tragedy of his downfall was entirely lost. Slim Pickens was offered the role of Dick Halloran. He had worked with Kubrick before, playing Major T.J. King Kong in Dr. Strangelove or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. However, he was an unusual choice for the role, as the character is black in the book. Pickens opted not to work with Kubrick again, as he found the demanding Dr. Strangelove shoot too grueling. The role ultimately went to Scatman Crothers. In the book, the eerie events take place in room 217, not room 237. The change was made due to Oregon's Timberline Lodge, which served as the exterior for the hotel in some shots. The lodge's management requested the room number be altered to prevent guests from avoiding room 217. Since there was no room 237 in the hotel, that number was chosen instead. Interestingly, the Timberline Lodge's website notes, curiously and somewhat ironically, room 217 is requested more often than any other room at Timberline. It's unclear whether Kubrick personally typed 500 pages of "all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy." He didn't rely on a prop department for this task, instead using his own typewriter, which had a built-in memory, meaning it could have produced the pages automatically. However, the individual pages seen in the film have different layouts and errors, leading some to believe it would have been typical of the director to meticulously prepare each one himself. Unfortunately, we'll never know for sure. Kubrick never addressed this question before his death. Kubrick was renowned for his attention to detail, so when Jack Torrance is seen reading a Playgirl in the Overlook's lobby before he's hired, it's likely not without significance. The issue features an article about incest, and the most common theory is that Kubrick was subtly suggesting that Danny may have experienced abuse. Another article promoted on the cover is Interview, the selling of Starsky and Hutch's David Soul. which could be a further hint of foreshadowing. Regardless, no ordinary hotel would leave copies of Playgirl lying around, making the magazine an immediate red flag in the film. The Shining appeared to launch a promising career for child actor Danny Lloyd. He landed a role in a TV film 2 years later, but that was the extent of his acting career. However, Lloyd did make a brief cameo as a spectator in Doctor Sleep, Mike Flanagan's 2019 sequel to The Shining. To protect Lloyd, who was just 5 years old when he made the film, Kubrick told him they were making a drama. Lloyd didn't actually see the finished film until he was 16 years old. "I just personally don't find it scary because I saw it behind the scenes," Lloyd later said. "I know it might be kind of ironic, but I'd prefer funny films and documentaries." Jack Nicholson is responsible for the only line to make it into the top 100 movie quotes. While filming the scene where Jack breaks down a bathroom door with an axe, Nicholson improvised the famous Ed McMahon catchphrase from The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, "Here's Johnny." The line worked so well that it remained in the film. In addition to improvising one of the film's most famous lines, Nicholson actually wrote an entire scene. He felt a deep connection to Jack Torrance's berating of his wife while trying to write. "That's what I was like when I got my divorce," he has said. Nicholson explained in an interview that he had been under the pressure of being a family man with a daughter. He recounted accepting a job to act in a movie during the day while writing another film at night. Reflecting on the experience, he described how one evening while working in his corner, his wife Sandra unexpectedly walked in on what she perceived to be a maniac. Nicholson shared this story with Stanley Kubrick, and together they incorporated it into the scene. Though Kubrick had a good relationship with Nicholson, he was notoriously harsh on Shelley Duvall during filming. In her own words, "From May until October, I was really in and out of ill health because the stress of the role was so great. Stanley pushed me and prodded me further than I've ever been pushed before. It's the most difficult role I've ever had to play." The scene in which Wendy swings a bat at Jack is a prime example of this intense pressure. It famously made it into the Guinness Book of Records for taking 127 takes, the most for a scene with spoken dialogue. A keen observer and fan of The Shining pointed out that many aspects of the Overlook Hotel set defy logic. For instance, Ullman's office features a window to the outside, yet there are rooms surrounding the office, making such a window impossible. This issue is present with several windows throughout the film that don't align with the context. There's also a hallway in the Colorado Lounge that seems to appear out of nowhere. He points out many other inconsistencies, including the kitchen, maze, and Jack's apartment. Jan Harlan, the executive producer, confirmed that this was intentional. "The interiors don't make sense," he said. "Those huge corridors and ballrooms couldn't fit inside. In fact, nothing makes sense." Towards the end of filming, a fire broke out, destroying multiple sets. The fire destroyed 2 sound stages and threatened a third at Elstree Studios. Rebuilding one of these sound stages cost an estimated $2.5 million. There's a famous photo of Kubrick laughing in front of the wreckage. Perhaps he was laughing because he knew the novel ends with the Overlook Hotel burning down. The Shining required 900 tons of salt, and that was just for the final scene. At the end, Jack chases young Danny through a snow-covered hedge maze before ultimately meeting his demise. To create the intricate wintry maze, the filmmakers used an enormous amount of salt and crushed styrofoam. Kubrick, who hated flying, refused to leave England in the later years of his life, so he wasn't present when the opening credits were filmed. Instead, a second unit crew travelled to Glacier National Park in Montana, where they filmed the sequence from a helicopter. It's not unusual for a film's ending to change during post-production, but Kubrick went a step further, altering the ending after it had been in theatres for just a weekend, by cutting out a scene. While the original version of the scene is lost, pages from the screenplay still exist. The scene took place after Jack's death in the snow, with Ullman visiting Wendy in the hospital. He tells her about the things you saw at the hotel. They've really gone over the place with a fine-tooth comb and didn't find the slightest evidence of anything at all out of the ordinary. He also encourages Wendy and Danny to stay with him for a while. The scene would have ended with text over a black screen saying the Overlook Hotel would survive this tragedy as it had so many others. It is still open each year from May 20th to September 20th. It is closed for the winter. Critic Roger Ebert deemed the cut a wise decision, stating that the epilogue pulled one rug too many out from under the story. All Work and No Play Makes Jack a Dull Boy has many different translations. As per Kubrick's request, in the German version it translates to "Don't put off till tomorrow what you can do today." The Spanish translation reads, "Although one will rise early, it won't dawn sooner." In Italian it becomes, "He who wakes up early meets a golden day." The Shining has inspired so many film theorists that their conspiracies have become the focus of their own documentary, Room 237. One theory suggests that Kubrick helped to fake the moon landing and that The Shining is his confession. Another claims the film is about the genocide of Native Americans, while yet another interprets it as a story about the Holocaust and concentration camps. However, Leon Vitali, Kubrick's personal assistant during filming, has since dismissed these theories. "I was falling about laughing most of the time," he said of the documentary. "There are ideas espoused in the movie that I knew to be total balderdash." And there you have it, folks. You now know a little bit more about The Shining. If you enjoyed the video, which I presume you did as you've got this far, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any future videos coming to Rocky Watches Movies. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.